we on the air? Did, Mike, we're recording? Okay. I'd like to call the Bel Air Board of Town Commissioners Budget Work Session meeting for April 9th into session. Have a call to order. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Roll call.
Do you want to do the roll call? Roll call? Yeah.
Roll call.
Okay. All right. Mr. Krantz, roll call.
Commissioner Rutledge,
Here.
Commissioner Chismar,
Here.
Commissioner Taylor,
Here.
Commissioner Chance.
Here.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. And from what I understand, Chair Edding is on her way.
On her way, yes. Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Do a quick one, that's, yeah, okay. All right, so the fiscal year 2026 budget discussion. I will give that over to Lisa for you to lead us through the 3-inch binder.
Yes, I will definitely do that. So I know for, I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead. Good? Okay. I know 3 out of the 4 of you, this is your second budget year, so congratulations on getting this far. This is actually my 29th budget year, so I'm going to guide you all through this as we did last year. We're going to do a little bit of an introduction right now, so I'm going to ask you to turn to page 1. We're going to come back to this page, but just pointing out that pages 1 through 7 are the town administrator's budget, and it's broken down between the 4 funds of general fund, the sewer, the parking fund, which are our enterprise funds, as well as the special revenue fund. Revenues are always listed first, and then the expenses are listed second, and you will see that it's a balanced budget, as Mr. Hopkins mentioned Monday night. Turning to page 8, that is our tentative budget schedule. So it's just a summary, quick glance to let you know when the next budget work session is, and the date and the time. Pages 9 through 11 will give you all the same date information, but it also will give you who is going to be presenting on that date. So next Tuesday, April 15th, is actually our next budget session, but it is a regular work session schedule first. So we'll have a regular work session first, and then we'll get into budget. You may notice that on pages 9 and 10, it does not list any of the nonprofits yet who is going to be presenting. I did reach out to all of them Monday after the board meeting, and I've heard back from about 75% of them. I'm still waiting to hear back on a few. For Tuesday, I don't have either one of them confirmed yet. So I've got 2 slotted, but neither one of them is confirmed. So more to come on that.
Lisa, just to let you and everybody else know that, and I think I've notified everybody, but the 21st, 24th, and 29th of April are meetings I will not be able to make. So just make sure we have a quorum. I just want to restate that for everybody.
I had noted that on my calendar.
Right, okay.
Thank you. All right. Moving to page 12. This is our assessable base chart. So we show what our projected assessable base is for fiscal year 26, broken down between our annual real property, our half-year real property, and then the 3 types of personal properties, unincorporated, incorporated, and public utilities. The current tax rate of 54 cents for real property and $1.20 for personal property. And then what an additional 1 cent on the tax rate would be, increasing it for both real and personal. That equates to just a little under $172,000. This is just something that we've always provided. It's interesting to see. I'm not suggesting we do anything with it, but it's just more for informational purposes. On page 13, that will show our property tax revenue growth. So when you think property tax, don't just think real property, because personal property is included in this, and those three types that I just mentioned are included in this. So again, our last tax rate increase was in fiscal year '22, which was a 4-cent tax increase. Between fiscal year '25 and '26, we're estimating 6.5% increase. Now, I expect that number to come down a little bit, and the reason for that is we're still in '25, it's still not completed yet. Our numbers have come in higher than budget, so that's gonna push it closer to the FY '26 number, which is gonna shrink your percentage. So just keep that in mind.
So-
Regardless, it's still a nice increase, and I'll talk about that when I get to revenue. I don't think that was me.
Okay. I was going to ask, what drives that increase? But if you're going to,
Yep.
talk about
Yep,
it later,
I sure
we'll wait
will.
then. Okay.
I'm gonna come back to the details.
I think mine might be ultra sensitive. There we go. It's a very, that's a very robust figure, so I'm interested in learning more about that.
Page 14, we're gonna come back to as well. That's our CIP. Page 15 and 16 are really our visual charts, again, focusing on the general fund. Just a comparison between the two fiscal years up at the top, and then the chart itself, as one would expect. The blue is the largest source of our revenue, which is our property taxes, again, both real and personal. Our state shared taxes, the orange, is going to be our second largest source at 18.9%. So think income tax, police protection, admission and amusement. So those accounts. Highway user, how could I forget highway user? And then the rest are, again, much lower than those two numbers, but a very important piece. Each one of those are important pieces to the budget. And then on page 16, again, comparison between FY '25 and '26 up at the top, and then our chart showing the green of public safety at 39.6, which is the well above really the next one, which is public works at 27.1. Regardless, you would expect that those two departments would have the lion's share of the expenses because they are the largest departments in the town. General government is just behind public works. So general government, think about really all the other departments. So economic development, town administrator, human resources, technology, finance, planning, etc. Important to note on this page is that in FY '26, our salaries and benefits represent 66.1% of the total general fund budget expenditure. That percentage is an important one. It also does include the proposed changes to the new scale and the 2.9% COLA that are housed in that miscellaneous or that other budget that we talked about Monday night. So this 66.1 compares to fiscal year '25, which was 70.2. So it actually has come down. Again, very important percentage that we always want to keep an eye on and make sure it does not get out of control. And when I say out of control, generally, experts will tell you once it gets into the mid to high 70s, you need to relook at things. So we are in good shape. After that, you all will have tabs for each one of the departments. We are going to review actually 3 of those tonight, so I will not go into any more detail on those. We can move right into the revenue discussion unless you all have any questions on those pages that I talked about.
Just at a high level, and if this question can't be answered at a high level, I'll accept that as an answer too, and we can talk about it later in detail. But how is it, by what fortune did it happen that 70% went down to 66% despite a robust merit step, COLA, a decent raise this year?
So I don't have details for you, but off the top of my head, we did have we had some employees, a few, not many, who have tenure who left. We also had our workers' comp was reduced. While our health insurance increased, our workers' comp was reduced. The overall budget really did not change. If you look at page 1, even with the American Rescue Plan. So when I say that, though, when I did that calculation in fiscal year '25, you want to back out ARPA. It's one time, and it has no meaning to really your budget. So we backed out that number. So when you back out that number, you do see the change in your bottom line. So that impacted it as well. I can look into it a little bit more further for you, but that's just a high-level answer for you. You're welcome.
Didn't we get like a $300,000 refund on our, one of the benefits, was it the workman's comp or something like that?
We did. That was in
Last year.
that was in FY '24. Yes, it was
20, okay.
because we're in 25.
Right.
I know it's very hard when you're talking about
No, I'm trying to
different fiscal
remember when
years.
that was. You told us, I thought
It was
you told
FY
us, like-
'24.
Like a couple months ago about it.
Oh, well, yes,
That
we
were getting
did-
the
we-
refund, but it was for '24.
So, no.
Okay.
So we received a refund in FY '24. We also did receive a refund in FY '25, and we're waiting to see if we're going to receive a refund from Chesapeake employers for their
Okay.
dividends in FY '25.
Because that brings down that percentage too. Because that's less on benefits you're paying, correct?
No, that's revenue coming in, so it doesn't really touch expense. So that's money coming in the door. So
No,
we're
no,
only
no,
looking at
okay.
salaries and benefits that are going out the door with all of our expenses, so that really wouldn't impact that number.
Okay. I was
And
wondering if you knew that before you did the computation, that's all.
I didn't,
That's what I.
the 66%? So when I,
Or last year's 70%.
oh, no, we did not know.
Right, we did not know.
No,
for the
we did not know.
70%, right.
We did not know. No. So when I talk about the 70.2% from FY '25, that was based on what you all approved as the budget. A lot has changed since then, right? We've got some additional monies coming in, and maybe we have some additional expenses going out, but I didn't recalculate that number. That number
that's
was
what-
what
yeah.
I told you all last year. At this time, I'm not gonna touch that number. I'm just gonna calculate it again for '26. So anything that has happened in fiscal year '25, I haven't taken into account to change that 70% number. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else, guys?
I was just going to say, I do remember that you've mentioned that in a number of budget years, that keeping that number under 70% is something that you look at closely because it is an indicator of how healthy our budget is.
Yeah, I would say more like 75%, mid-70s, is really when you want to start to say, ooh, let's take another look at this. We really have not that I can recollect, gotten close to that 75%
And
number.
certainly this number is really far away from it.
Exactly.
We're not even breaking 70. So
Correct.
That's a great bellwether.
Yep, absolutely. All right, you all ready to delve into revenues then? All righty, so we're going back to page 1. And again, I'm just going to hit the highlights. Please, if you see something that you don't understand or you have a question about, please ask. But we're going to start right at the top. We're going to focus on the FY26 column that says estimated. FY26 gives you the 2 tax rates that I mentioned earlier. So up at the top, first number is a very important number. It's our real property taxes at $9.2 million. Just to give you a little bit of background first on fiscal year 25, where we are, our assessments received to date equate to $8.8 million. If you look at the budget column for FY25, you're going to see 8.6. So we've already exceeded our budget in 25 by about $200,000. That's important. For fiscal year 26, the estimate we received from the State Department of Assessments and Taxation per the constant yield equates to $9,240,000. Now, that's not that number on page 1, and the reason for that is because we reduced that number by our volunteer fire company tax credits that we do. That equates to a little over $13,000. We have some historic district credits in existence right now, about $7,000. So that number has to be reduced. And then we always seem to use the real property amount to balance the budget. We needed about $4,300 to balance the budget. So it's such a big number that we just take care of that. So $9,215,000 is really comparable to $8.8 million when you're looking at this page. Okay. It's about a 4.3% increase, $383,000. So we don't question. I have questioned. That's not true. So there have been years where I have questioned something from the assessment office, or at least tried to get more information because it didn't make sense. And they've always been very good to answer my questions. This year and even last year, nothing really came up. It's just when something looks more like wasn't anticipating it. We're in our final year of the reassessment phase, so we expected an increase. Next year is going to start a whole new triennial phase, so we'll see where that goes. I believe between 24 and 25, we were around 4% increase, so you expect that same increase in this fiscal year as well. So I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. The next account is the Public Utility Corporation. So a couple lines down at $543,000. Again, going back to FY25 is, again, important in this case. Assessments received to date equate to $528,000. So that's comparable to the $500,000 that's in the 25 column. Again, important. Mainly from, I call them the big 3, so Verizon, BGE, and Maryland American. Maryland American and Verizon assessments have really remained pretty stable the last couple of years, so I'm flat funding them as well. But BGE assessments are continuing to increase, so I factored an increase in that as well. Hence the increase from 528 to 543. That's all I was going to cover in the property tax that goes from real property taxes to penalties and interest, unless you all have a question. All righty. All right, so we're going to move on to our state shared taxes. And I may mention those subtotals that you see on the right-hand side. So let's say, $10,254,000. Those are going to be the subtotals of the categories that are on page 15 of the chart. So that's how things kind of correlate with the different categories in our pie chart to page 1. So in our state share, we have a lot to talk about here. We're going to start with our income taxes, and we're going to have the same conversation this year as we had last year, if you all remember that. So just as a reminder, this is the most difficult revenue to budget because the state gives you nothing. They will not give you any type of projection where you get a projection for highway user, you get a projection most of the time for police protection. This one, it's kind of hands-off. So we do the best we can. The best estimate is to use historical revenues and add 2 to 3%, but really the percentage changes historically are what's most important. We do receive a significant portion of our revenue at the end of May, June, and August. You may say, well, August, that's not in the current fiscal year, but it is considered the previous fiscal year's revenues. It has to do with what they're paying in August. It relates back to June. So you have to bring it back. It's called an accrual in accounting. So we have always done that, and that's not something you want to change because then you're changing your accounting methodology. Historically wise, the last 4 completed fiscal years, fiscal year 21 was 1.8 million, fiscal year 22 was about 2 million, fiscal year 23 was 2.1 million, fiscal year 24 was 2.3 million. So in fiscal year 25, you can see it's budgeted at 2.2 million. It's low, based on what we've received so far this fiscal year and knowing what we received in the last, we won't get a distribution in April, so May, June, July is not significant. In August, the projection is 2.4 million. So based on that 2.4 million, the fiscal year 26 budget estimate represents a 2% increase at $2,447,000. Any questions? Okay. All right, highway user at $805,562. I can't remember when highway user was that much. And one of the things that we're required to do, I don't know if counties are required to do it, honestly, but I know municipalities are. I'm assuming counties are. But it's written into the annotated code that we're required to complete an annual report. They basically want to know how you're spending the money. And we better be spending the money according to the annotated code and what's allowable, what's eligible. Salaries and benefits, you can't use highway user to pay for salaries and benefits. You can't use it to pay for equipment. So there are specific things that you can use it on. And so when I did the calculation, I realized that we were about $95,000 short, meaning we didn't have enough expense. We weren't spending all of it. And that's because it increased about $90,000. So Steve and Charlie got their sheets together that have, what streets need to be resurfaced when, and we're able to provide another street for street construction. So have no fear, we will spend appropriately that 805. But that's it's great news. It's nice to be sitting with that number. We'll take it for FY26 because obviously we have no idea where 27 and 28 will be. So 1 year at a time. We increased the street construction, so if we do lose some of our highway user in future years, we can back that down. So good news is we're doing an extra street this year, so it's getting us a leg up. So should something happen in, let's say, 27, we can back that back down. Okay?
So those highway funds are secured based upon the state budget that was just passed?
I did not see anything, nor did MML did not put anything out. I didn't see
Okay.
anything with MACO. that they had been cut. Jake,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I did not see, into my understanding, there was no attempt to change the funding formula that they agreed on last year.
Okay.
I think there was a significant amount of pushback then, not to say that they didn't do plenty of things that garnered a significant amount of pushback, but I think folks, a deal was struck last year and there was not any appetite to change that.
Right.
Mhm.
So these funds are safe, good.
Well,
We think so.
for like a
Well,
little. For next year, sure.
I mean, yeah, that's what I mean for next year.
yes, but I will even have to say, they may not even be, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to give you what I experienced in my tenure here. In fiscal year '08, when the world fell apart with financials and the stock market went crazy, that happened in September of 2008. I remember that because it was my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, it was not fun. The state, that same year, shortly after that, rated all of our highway user. And so they gave it to us, but mid-fiscal year,
They pulled
they
back.
took it. So I would say, nothing's 100%, especially with how the state is with their budget right now. But, we generally don't spend our street construction money until the spring. So,
Okay, so we'll have a better idea.
Yeah.
If they're gonna pull anything back by then.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
all right, the last one in here is our police protection grant. It does show a decrease. The state didn't provide any type of estimate, as they didn't the last couple of years. So I just budgeted the same as fiscal year '25. Fiscal year '25 will not be 271,000, it'll be 261,000, so we will take a slight reduction in FY '25. All right, so I don't have anything to really review with you in the next section, which is licenses and permits, except to say that our cable TV franchise continues to decline. That number used to be in the 160s. It's every year we're seeing a decrease. The next section is going to be our grants. The first one there is about halfway through the Harford County tax rebate. So again, this is based on a detailed Harford County formula. It actually translates in fiscal year '26 to a $40,000 increase. It's the amount given to the 3 municipalities, recognizing that we provide our own police patrol services inside our boundaries in lieu of the sheriff providing the services. The next account is the stormwater management, Harford County, at $130,000. This was based on, or is based on, an MOU that was signed in April of 2020 with Harford County along with Aberdeen and Havre de Grace. It provides an annual distribution toward the cost of stormwater remediation obligations. We generally get, I believe according to the MOU, they're required to provide a distribution by October 1st. That's an estimate. And then they true up after their audit is complete. The calculation is based on the Harford County recordation tax revenue. So that's what they're using to fund their stormwater management remediation. So that's what they're using to give us our portion. So as their recordation taxes fluctuate, our share is going to fluctuate. This number generally should match the budget in Steve's Public Works Administration budget, the MS4 Stormwater Management. However, the town is utilizing $45,000 to pay for 70% of the environmental engineering technician's salary. This is one of the items that came out of our listening sessions. It was fiscal year 24, I believe. So we've just continued with that tradition, if you will. The reduction here from 140 to 130 is based on fiscal year 24 and 25. We have seen a reduction. It used to be around 140, and now it's come down to high 20s to about 130. We do have a stormwater management reserve fund, though. So monies that we bring in that we don't spend in that fiscal year are transferred to the the reserve fund. And the reason we did that, and when I say we, Steve and I, and of course the town administrator, is because there's going to be a year that Harford County's, the money coming in from Harford County isn't going to fund what we need to that year. We're going to have maybe a big project, maybe we can't get grant funding for it. So in that year, we'll be able to use some of that reserve that we've set aside to pay for that project, along with the money coming in from Harford County. So, and the balance is $301,000 in that reserve. Still in that section, but the very last account in that section, miscellaneous grants. We anticipate funding from various sources for the Alice Ann Park project that's in the planning budget. We have applied for a grant from ARP. All I could think of was ARPA. I knew that wasn't right. From ARP, AARP. But we're also looking at, the Alliance said that they would assist us maybe with some going out to get a grant for it. And again, there will be some other sources, but our goal is to pay for this project with 100% grant funding, and that is the way the budget is set up. Okay. Moving on to the kind of the larger section now. These are our fees, our interest income is in here, and then our fines. The first one is the Beller Armory fee, which is the very first account. It is based on history. We will bring in more than $97,000 in fiscal year 25. Now, we did lose, or the school who rented the lower classrooms will be vacating at the end of June. So that's about $12,000 in revenue that we'll lose. When I factored in the budget, I made an assumption that we would at least make up 50% of that. Knowing Julia, she'll probably make up 100% of that, because she's done such a tremendous job with the armory and renting it out. Hence the increase in armory fees between the two fiscal years. So, but just in case, a little bit conservative there, and we'll see where that goes. The second account is the red light camera at $637,500. I was very hesitant to put this number in the budget because it just seems crazy high, to be honest. But let me give you a number for FY25. So right now, based on tickets paid through the month of March, so 3 more months to go, we're projected to bring in $748,000. The budget's $581,000. We have not collected that much in red light camera revenue in the past. So I'm being very honest when I said that 637 made me pause until I really delved into fiscal year 25 to see, okay, well, where are we in 25? It's almost $800,000, so then the 637 didn't make me feel so bad. I'm confident with that number. That is based on an average of about $53,000 a month coming in. We did have a few months in FY25 that were in the high 70s. I don't know. So we're going to watch that number as we go into FY26, but I can already tell you that the month of April is already on track for that average.
Are
And
we,
That's really a number we want to see at 0. I mean, it's crazy
I know.
that it's so high.
are we considering more red light cameras anywhere in town?
I
No.
don't believe so. I know that Chuck has, I mean, there's been some discussion, but I don't believe that there are any additional locations that will warrant another red light camera. My understanding, and maybe Eddie can chime in, but my understanding is that you have to have the accident data and maybe the tragedies, you know, with running a red light, to be able to provide that documentation to highway, state highway. Eddie, did you? That's correct. Okay. So not that I'm aware of, Mary.
Correct me if I'm wrong, there's a red light camera going on Route 1 if you're going east on Route 1 at Bond Street. You know what I'm saying? You're coming from the mall toward downtown Bel Air on Route 1. There's a,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
we have three. There's one at 22 in Maine, when you coming eastbound on
22 in Maine.
Right, you have one at Baltimore Pike and what I would call High Street or Kenmore Street Extended, but it's actually Bond Street. And then you have one on 24 at the traffic light down at the Four Corners, Hartford Mall, on Vietnam Veterans Memorial Highway.
And then you have a fourth one on 24 coming down the bypass into Bel Air.
Yes.
The reason I ask is I traveled that strip on Bond Street, going toward like Bel Air High School, that area,
Mhm.
a lot. And especially when it's really busy traffic time in the morning, I am amazed at the number of people that run that red light. It's just mind-boggling to me. Not a yellow light, a red light.
Hmm.
So, just wondered.
Yep. I can
Well-
certainly pass that on to the chief. Yep, we can do that. Yeah. All right, so let's see, we're still in that category. Miscellaneous income. This is not one that I normally talk to you all about, but I did this evening because it does show an increase of $30,000, and it's for one purpose, one project only. There is a project in the budget in town buildings for the roof replacement cost to the building on Pennsylvania Avenue that Eddie mentioned Monday night. It's $60,000. We will be requesting that 50% of that be paid from the Bel Air Parks and Rec. They are the users of that building. So that $30,000 is housed in that miscellaneous income, because it really doesn't belong in any other account. Okay. Interest on investments is another kind of hot topic. Budgeted $420,000, which is down from fiscal year '25, which you should expect. Rates are coming down. Last year at this time, the local government investment pool, which is managed by PNC, that is where the town has the majority of its money, as do most counties and municipalities. It's very well run. It's extremely liquid. There are no fees for wires or disbursements or monies coming in. It's a great program. But the rate was 5.36%. It's 4.22 today. So we all have heard, you know, the feds have already made a few cuts earlier this fiscal year. Don't know exactly where everything's gonna fall out, but I did factor in a rate reduction to get us to the $420,000. From a CD perspective, you know, we try to I guess, invest in a CD at as many local banks as we can. It's getting harder right now, though, because rates are coming down, and so they're not even coming close to what I can get at the pool. So you really have to weigh relationship. How much more money am I going to make in the pool? And it's a significant difference, too significant for me to say, yes, we're going to invest some money with you all, because you have to invest a sizable amount of money. You just can't invest $50,000. I mean, I'm investing $250,000 in CDs, so a little lower than that, because I always make sure that we're below the FDIC limit. In case a bank goes under, we will get all of our money back. So it's making it harder to invest with local banks, but I'm continuing to try and watch what our local banks are doing. But the CDs that we still do have, they'll be maturing. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we have 5 maturing in fiscal year '26, and those rates are still at 4.5 at 4.5 to 4.85. So still have a nice investment rate. All right. Anything else on that section with fees? Everybody good? All right. So the last section is that bottom, and it's kind of our transfer section. It has to do with the different fund balances and whatnot. The first one there is the transfer from unassigned, $313,000. This is what I mentioned. Jake, you had asked about this Monday night. So that $313,000 equates to the cost of a new pay plan for the civilian, which includes the public works guys that were on a separate plan, a 1% addition to the entire pay scale of the sworn, the difference in merits, and the difference in the cost of living. So let me explain that. So when I put the budget together, in everyone's departments, there is a salary page, and it includes a merit step increase for all employees, as Eddie mentioned the other night. That's based on the current scale. So, and that is paid for by current year revenues. When we look at a pay plan change, historically, we've looked at it, and any change in those merits and changes in that cost of living from being on a new scale have been funded from the unassigned fund balance. It's considered a one-time, a one-time expense, a one-time change, which allows us to use the unassigned. In some years, when we've expected to utilize those monies from unassigned, we haven't needed to, because we've brought in an extra amount of revenue to cover those costs. But that's what equates to that $313,000 is those items. Then when we look at the capital reserve of $750,000, we're proposing to utilize the capital reserve to really pay for our vehicles and our equipment. So we have a vehicle budgeted in the planning department, in the technology or IT department, replacement vehicles. We have 4 replacement vehicles in the police department, 2 replacement vehicles in the streets section, and then 2 major pieces of equipment in the shop, and then a trailer in streets. So all of that equates to $758,000. We're not proposing to take any kind of building maintenance and repairs from capital reserve. All of that is going to be funded from current year revenues. But I think if you guys might remember last year, Annie and I had the conversation with you all that, we're going to be very prudent in our use of capital reserve. And we feel that this year it makes sense to utilize that for our vehicle and equipment purposes instead of going out to the local banks and borrowing money. It might be the cheaper way to go in a certain fiscal year, because less is coming out of your current year revenues, but again, you're paying interest on that. Rates are at a high right now, so it's really not a smart time to borrow money, currently. And we have the monies in our capital reserve and are comfortable with where we are. And even with looking at what we had anticipated to use in fiscal year '25 from the capital reserve, just the few items that I've mentioned to you, the real property taxes, the income taxes, just really in those two line items, we're not going to need to take $1.1 million from the capital reserve because we've brought in additional current year revenues to pay for those items. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on that?
Do we have the capital reserve balance somewhere in here?
No, but I
Okay.
have it.
Okay.
So we are currently finishing up the FY24 budget, so I will have more updated numbers for you, but I'm going to give you numbers that I have right now, okay? So right now, well, I wrote down every one of them but that one. If you can believe that, Jake. I will have to get back to you then. I have, the stabilization reserve is at $1.5 million. Remember, that one is in cases of emergency. So, tornadoes, hurricanes, major flooding, stuff like that. Our leave payout reserve is at a maximum, cannot put any more money in that reserve. It's at a maximum of $300,000. But I know we're going to be utilizing that in FY24 and FY25. And then the unassigned fund balance, which is where that $313,000 comes from, it's at $2.7 million. That is a very healthy place to be. So no concerns there, and I am so sorry, I don't know what happened to that number. But I will get it for you.
We've got plenty of seconds.
No worries.
So the capital reserve would be another item in addition, because you got like, according to this, about 4.5 million plus the capital reserve number. Is that right? That we have.
Oh, you're just adding up the numbers that I gave you?
That you gave me,
Yes.
1.5, 300, and 2.7, so it's 3 and 1.5 is 4.5 mil.
Mhm.
And it's plus
Capital reserve,
the capital reserve,
yes.
whatever that is.
But just realize each one of those reserve has its own purpose.
Correct,
So you can't mix and match. You can't use leave payout for something else. You can't use stabilization unless,
right.
God forbid, we have a crazy natural disaster. You can't use unassigned, but for one-time use. So vehicle purchases are not considered a one-time use because you do that every year. Okay.
Okay.
If you had a, see, I wouldn't even use it for that. I was gonna say if you had like a major park project, but that was capital reserve. That's not assigned fund balance. So it's important to keep your unassigned fund balance at a comfortable level, just in case. It's not considered a rainy day fund. You could call the stabilization reserve that, but again, it's only for emergencies. So you're really focused on your capital reserve to use for capital purposes. So I will get you that number.
Okay. Just that number, and also be interested to know what things the unassigned can be used for. Because you said
One time.
one time,
One time.
which is like, but you said a park upgrade would not necessarily be
What-
something.
Because you'd use that would be capital reserve.
Right.
For it. So, your unassigned fund balance is really not used hardly ever. If you don't have a capital reserve fund, then yes, maybe that it would be
Right.
used for that, but we do. So you're not gonna use your unassigned fund balance for something that you have a capital reserve for if it's capital in nature. You're not gonna use your unassigned fund balance for reoccurring operations, because that just puts you in a really bad place that you don't wanna be in. So really, the only time that I can recall us recommending to use the unassigned is when we have some type of pay plan change. That has been the only time that I can recall. So keep in mind that we have policies in place for our capital reserve, our leave payout, that a percentage of any revenues over expenditures, the town administrator is authorized to transfer to the capital reserve. So not all of it goes, so let's say your revenues over expenditures are $1 million. That generally would go into your unassigned fund balance. But why would you want it to go there if you can't really use it?
And that's why I wanted to know what we could use.
So that's,
makes sense.
that's why we have policies in place to say, okay, up to a certain percentage can go into the capital reserve. Up to a certain percentage, and that 300,000 can go into leave payout reserve. And then you have to be following policy with your stabilization reserve, which is based on your expenditures. So you have all these different, all these other reserves that you can utilize that excess revenue over expense for, to be able to use that in future years for those purposes, instead of it going into your fund balance and it just sit there. So we're trying to reuse any excess, if that makes sense.
And so how is it that a pay plan change qualifies as a one-time expense?
As it doesn't happen every year. It's not reoccurring.
But don't we have to make up for those increases in pay each following year?
You do,
Right,
yes, you do.
okay.
But
In general.
you have a new, because you do have a new pay plan, so that next year in fiscal year '27, nothing will come from the unassigned.
Right.
It's basically just, the way that the revised pay plan, and we're gonna get into that later in a session, but it's really the movement of a person. So this person was here on this scale, and now they're gonna be here on this scale. So it's that change. I'm sorry, Michael.
It's, I think the distinction, at least, is a brand-new pay scale versus pay raise or a COLA on the existing scale,
Mhm.
if that makes any sense.
Right, but
correct.
they'll stay then on that new scale going forward, so the money still has to be made up.
Well, but what I think what Michael and I are saying is the majority of that money is that one-time placement on the new scale. Because the scale is totally different.
Mhm.
So you're taking someone who was, I'm making these numbers up, 55,000 at this grade and step, and it's not, they don't quite fit at 55,000 on the new scale, so it may be that 3% more on the new scale. But you still have the same, the change or the difference in your steps hasn't changed, it's still 5%. So it's just the one-time change of placement on a scale that's really driving this number with benefit. Remember, it's salary and benefits,
Mhm.
so it's just not salary. We're not suggesting to change that between steps. We're not suggesting that percentage change.
Yeah,
So,
the-
go ahead.
Yeah, the one-time adjustment doesn't happen on an annual basis. You know, we hope to always be able to afford a COLA and a merit step, regardless of what pay scale we have, but we normally, the pay scales have been lasting for a handful of years, if not more. In the past, sometimes the pay scale has lasted even longer. So I do understand your question, but I guess so that's the logic that I've been using with regards to justifying the one time.
Okay, but to Commissioner Chismar's point, each successive year, it's still got to come out of the general fund because they're not losing that adjustment. I mean, they're,
No.
right, their
No, but
pay
there's-
goes up and it stays at that level.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. And that's,
Right,
and that's
right.
what this that's what
Okay.
this 313,000 is doing. And then after that, it's your change in steps. So you're getting let's say a 5% merit and
Mhm.
whatever COLA. That is not changing after that. So this is helping us get to that point. And then in
Right,
the
it's easing
future,
us in,
correct.
so we've got to find other places to pay for it each successive fiscal year.
It shouldn't be, and it has not been in the past, difficult, because you're not changing the percentage of people's increases in the future.
Sure.
It's still a 5% merit or 3% merit. Wherever you fall on the scale, we haven't changed those differences going forward.
I see your point now. Why would you use funds that are intended for one-time expenditure for recurring expenses?
Right.
I'm sorry, I was,
No,
mi-
no,
I was
it's okay.
missing that.
That
in
was
your-
sort of
in
the
your-
nexus of
in
the
your
question.
question.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yes. But,
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
Still on this unassigned point, and this, is the policies that you stated are in place with regard to the definitions and the parameters around the unassigned. What is the source of those policies? Are these municipal accounting policies we're bound by? Are they set by state law? Are they set by the commission? How's that work?
So the policies, the reserves that I mentioned, those were all policies that were approved by the town commissioners.
And the policy particularly on the unassigned?
No policy exists for that. It is generally accounting principles
Okay.
that guides that. So it's GAAP accounting is the acronym for that. And then it's also governmental accounting, the Governmental Accounting Standards
Yeah.
Board, that comes out with, your goal is you want to keep, they want to see a percentage of your expenditures in your unassigned.
Okay, so if a future commission was really facing just a huge economic crisis, something unanticipated, something that had never happened before, would a future board of commissioners be able to, even though in a good year like, or in years like we've had under your leadership, things have been good, that, had that problem in 2008, but still the town survived in great shape. Would the commissioners be able to adopt a policy for an emergency situation if the unassigned had to happen, just to make sure that the essentials were covered?
Yeah, I mean,
Even though it's not technically a rainy day fund, I get that, we don't want to just look at it like that.
right. Great question, for sure. So in the situation that you're talking about, I think the stabilization reserve would come into play. So you would use those monies first, and then you do what you have to do, and you use the unassigned. So yes, there are extenuating circumstances that you have to do what you have to do to keep running, like any business would, right? Any business that has had something thrown at them that is totally unexpected, once in a lifetime, or, once in, 25, 50 years, that shouldn't happen again. You do what you have to do, and yes, you absolutely can do that. You have to survive.
I appreciate that. I have no intention of trying to upset the apple cart. I just wanted to understand that. So
No,
thank you very much.
I get it, of
appreciate
course.
Okay.
No, it's a good question.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you clarified that, because that was my concern about, we have a lot of money sitting in there. If it can only be used for one-time things, then what if, the crisis situation comes up, why can't it be used?
Yes.
And what's governing that it can only be used for one thing? Can you change that? So I think you've
Right.
addressed that,
Right,
and,
right. Yeah, and I would say, besides GAP and GASB, common sense too, because
Right,
you don't want to use your equity for regular, reoccurring expenses, because
Yeah,
you'll
right.
never get out of that cycle.
right.
So how do you continue to pay for things? You're just going to continue to eat into your equity. Think of personally, it's the same logic. So I think even common sense tells us, no, that's not what you do. But like when you get into, when something that happens to you personally that is unusual or devastating, you dip into something that you don't want to dip into.
Right.
Your retirement maybe, or, something. This would be the same way. You do what you have to do to survive.
Can we replicate you and send you to Annapolis?
No.
She's not going.
One time, yeah.
Oh, my. No.
So if we do have, if we come out where our revenues are, at the end of the year, our revenues are greater than our expenditures, and you say we will take monies and put it in, how do we distribute it between the stabilization, the unassigned, and the capital improvement? I mean, is there, you said you had a policy, is that,
I do.
is it hard, fast policy, 20/20, 20/20/60, or, percentage-wise?
Sure.
Or-
So for the capital reserve, the policy, and we amended this in September 5th of 2023. The town can transfer up to an additional 75% of the excess of revenues over expenditures to the reserve account. That was 50. We recommended and the board approved it that it be 75. So that's the capital reserve. The leave payout reserve, same logic there. Transfer up to an additional 50%. It used to be 25%. It was also amended in September, on September 5th, 2023. And the maximum amount in that reserve was 200,000. We changed it to 300,000. And what's used in that account used to be any employee who was paid out $2,500 was changed to $5,000, because $2,500 was just nickel and diming that fund to death. The stabilization reserve is much more complicated. It's not that cut and dry. It is a formula that has to be used. It's called a stabilization reserve target. And it's based on your audited non-GAAP expenditures from your audited statements, less any capital. So it's looking at your norm for your expenditures. Capital is not considered norm because your projects fluctuate. So based on a calculation, you have the target. If your reserve balance is not at that target, then you have to transfer money either in or out from the unassigned fund balance to the stabilization reserve. So it's really not a percentage, it's just based on a calculation.
So what is the stabilization reserve target?
It changes every year depending on what your audited expenditures less your capital are.
So we have 1.5 mil in there now, so
Mhm.
that was good for last year, that was our.
Correct.
So that was the number for.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly right. Any other questions?
And then the unassigned doesn't have any target or max or,
Let me get back to you on that. I just have to go back to my audited statements.
Okay.
I know it's a percentage range. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
okay.
Okay. Anything else on revenues? Alrighty, so I will get back to you all on the balance of the capital reserve and then the information on the percentage with the unassigned. Okay? Alrighty. Okay, so we're gonna move on to page 14, which is the CIP. I'm gonna focus on FY '26 column. And I'm just gonna run through these semi-quickly, but I just wanted to give you a first kind of glance as to what capital projects are in the budget, and then when the different departments review their budgets with you, they'll go over the projects more in depth, okay? So the very first one, on the line ADM01 is the department, which is shown all the way to the left, is a $165,700. That is various, that's our IT department, so that's technology. So that's our various server replacements, network replacements. We have tough book replacements, which are replacements for our police vehicles. So very important. Eddie and I had this conversation during the budget. It's very important to keep up with technology and not get behind. And I think we would all agree that Josh does a tremendous job. We are very lucky to have him on board as our technology manager. He really knows his stuff, and I think TJ coming on board has just added to that. But extremely important, and I know you'll hear that from Josh as well, to keep up with what needs to be done from our hardware and software perspective. The next line is the ADM03, which is the IT vehicle. The technology department is requesting a replacement of their IT van, estimated amount of $38,000. The next one is PLN01, which is the planning vehicle at $50,000. The director of planning is requesting that his vehicle be replaced. Estimated amount is $50,000 for that vehicle. If you look at PLN04, $73,000. This is in the planning department's budget as well. It's the bike pedestrian improvement. There's really a lot going on in this account, from restriping and adding separate bike lanes, to kiosk graphics, to adding bike lanes and several different types of trails. So Kevin will give you all the details on that, but there's really just not one thing going on with that 73,000, but there are multiple items in there. PLN07, which is the trail enhancements at $90,000. This is that Alisand Park project. To improve that with a senior-focused exercise equipment cluster and a paved connection to Lester Way. Again, we're hoping to partner with the Alliance and the Seniors and Citizens in Need committee and maybe some other nonprofit organizations for grant funding. Now down to police. PD00 is their vehicles at $220,000. So a little bit more than you see across that row in fiscal year '24 and '25. And this is because the chief is recommending the purchase of 4 vehicles instead of 3. And he'll go over those details with you all. The next line down, which is BAPD equipment, PD01 at $271,000. Again, not just one specific piece of equipment here. It is our Live View Technologies surveillance trailer at $35,000. We paid for that for the first time in FY25. It is automated speed signs, 2 of them, in the total amount of $10,000. And then the largest amount in there that we are recommending is a Verkada security camera system at $226,000. And I know that the chief has a lot more information to go over that with you, and Eddie mentioned that camera system in his remarks on Monday. The very next line after that is still in the police department, body cameras of $38,351. This is the 3rd out of 5-year contract with the vendor for our body cameras and tasers. So we're really locked into that number. After that, we get into Public Works and their vehicles and equipment at $462,000. There are several pieces of equipment in the shop, one of them being the replacement of the gasoline and diesel fuel pumps and installing pedestals equipped with a management system at the shop. Very important purchase there. In the street section, still in that $462,000, a replacement trailer, a new clock for Main Street, and then a new dump truck, a replacement dump truck. This isn't above and beyond. A replacement dump truck and a replacement mini dump truck are also in the budget. Moving on to PWG04 at $164,000. This is all within the town buildings budget. There are 6 projects there. One of them being that roof replacement on the Parks and Rec building that I mentioned earlier. It's also to replace the ceiling tiles at the Public Works and Planning office, remove wallpaper and paint at those offices, replace the loading dock doors and operators at Public Works, installing a floor covering at Public Works break room, and the Rockfield Playground Pavilion roof replacement. So many things going on within that $164,000. And then I've already mentioned earlier the MS4 Stormwater Management Program at PWG05 at $130,000. The rest of those amounts there within that column that I did not mention are all debt service payments. So principal and interest. So really nothing further to discuss with those unless you all have any further questions. Anything on the CIP?
I ask, when it comes to paying down the debt on the building we're sitting in, how is the formula for, and I suspect this is probably the answer for all debt service payments, but how is the formula for how much principal and obviously, of course, the interest that we're paying off, how do we arrive at that number so that we're, not dedicating entirely too much of the budget towards paying off principal, in a unrealistic timeline, but that we're also not shirking that responsibility.
With all of those, or just
I mean,
a specific?
specifically the PD, because that's
yeah.
obviously the big ticket item. I'm
Yep.
less concerned about the, $6,000 payments until FY '27,
Right, yeah. I understand. I mean, we're simply just paying principal and interest right now. We're not paying anything more than we should be paying according to the amortization schedule. The interest rate is at 2.673, so really low.
Yep.
Nicely low. I don't recall off the top of my head any type of prepayment. With that, I'd have to go back into the bond docs and take a look at that. I don't know how we would pay it off. I mean, it's, the initial debt was $8 million.
Right,
So
right.
I don't see us paying it off, because I don't know where we would get that money.
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it
Jake.
does. I mean, it certainly, I'm under no illusion that we're able to pay this off, even in the next 10 years. I was just, currently it's scheduled to come to term in FY 2051.
Yep.
And I was just curious if there was any timeline that put that in an earlier date, or if that wasn't necessary, or I was just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly look in the documents and see when if we wanted to pay it off, when that would be.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we need to change
Yeah.
our trajectory. I was just curious.
Yeah. So the debt service right now, it fluctuates slightly, but it's right around $400,000.
Right.
That's P&I.
Right.
So that's principal and interest. I can, and if you'd like, I can give you a copy of the amortization schedule, if that would interest you.
Because that would really be, that's usually the comparison I make. How much am I paying in interest
Mhm.
Right.
on something?
Mhm.
Is it worth it to save a lot of money
Sure.
to make a prepayment
Oh.
or pay it down?
Absolutely.
But, I realize we don't have $8 million laying around to
Yeah.
pay this off. But, seeing how much is interest maybe out of all of our payments would be something that you'd be interested in.
I would be interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can email that to you all. Sure.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anything else, guys, on the CIP? Okay. Alrighty. So we're gonna move to, we have 3 departments we're gonna talk about tonight: the town administrator, legal, and commissioners. Eddie, I never asked you if you wanna do that or if you want me to. I'm good? Okay. Alrighty, so we're gonna move to page 25. Let me just reorient you all to this worksheet, because you're gonna see this in every department. It'll be the first pages that you see. The account name and the account number are gonna be on your far left, and then you all will see columns for fiscal year 21, 22, 23, and 24. We are in 25, and then, of course, 26. So if you look at salaries, for example, just take the first one. In fiscal year 21, the top number of 137,207 is what the system calls the appropriation. That's the budget. And then the number below it is physically how much we spent in that line item. So it's nice to have some history to take a look at. And then if we go all the way to the far right, underneath 2026, you'll see a requested column and an administrator recommended column. So the requested column is what the department head requested. The administrator recommended is what the town administrator has recommended. And I would say in the majority of cases, there were only a few, where there was a change between the two. One of them was Burns Alley. It showed up and requested, it's not in town administrator recommended. And then the other one that comes to mind is in deferred compensation match. We had some discussions where the town administrator recommended an increase to the deferred comp match that we did not have and requested. And that was based on conversations with Michael and myself and Eddie and some other members of the staff. All right, so got you oriented on that. If you-
Lisa, just one
Oh,
question.
sure.
On the 2025, the appropriated and actual, the actual is just, is that, they differ because that's year-to-date?
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Yep. If you turn to page 28, every department that has personnel in it, you'll see a salary justification after that worksheet. And it will, again, it includes a merit step increase for all employees. So that's what page 28 is. And then 29 and 30, again, for everybody, for all the other departments too, you'll see justifications for every single account that there's a budget request. So we have salary, and then we have all the benefits within that department, which again is what you're going to see in every department that has personnel. We will go over benefits at our April 24th meeting, so I'm going to skip those tonight. So if you look on page 30, that really only leaves Eddie with 4 accounts. So travel, training, and membership is at $2,235, so very, very, just a slight decrease from last year, with some MML conferences and chapter dinners. And then we have MML dues is the next account. If you remember, MML changed their restructuring of their dues in fiscal year '25. I haven't seen anything from them to know what the budget or what they're going to charge this year. So we just factored in a 3% increase. We'll see where that goes. And then telephone and supplies and miscellaneous are pretty much self-explanatory. Anything on town administrator?
Lisa, can I, just for a second?
Yes, of course.
So just under my thing, the third line down, MML Emergency Management Official Duties. As you know, I sit as the chairman of the E&T Committee for the Emergency Management Officials Department. They are contemplating, since they are now a board-sitting member of MML, they're going to be requiring dues this year to have a small fund to pull from for training and whatever they need. That's what that $200 represents. I also, previous town administrators, and even myself up to last year, I was not using, you all are very active with MML like I am, but you're attending the dinners and so forth. In many cases, it's not really necessary for me to go. So rather than have that money there and me not use it, I've asked Lisa to cut a number of those things back. It's not that I don't want to go, I think it's more prudent for you to go and not me. So my cuts to my budget, which isn't all that huge, but my cuts were just a couple pennies here and there to just save money where we could. So, thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, sure. Anything else? All right, we're going to move on to legal then, which is on page 61 and 62. This is a very difficult department to budget. I have to be honest. Eddie and I had several conversations on this. It's tough. But we took a look at, again, you base your budget on history, because that's sometimes all you have. We know that per contract, the hourly rate is increasing from $275 to $300. So that was factored in to the budget. And then we just tried to look at historically in fiscal year '25, what the costs have been, and just projected out where we think we'll be in FY '26. We didn't account for any kind of extraneous legal work. for potential lawsuits or anything like that. I don't like to budget that way. You budget for what you're comfortable with and really for as much as you know, and that we just don't know, so it doesn't make sense. So we've budgeted $129,000 for that, in that legal counsel services account 0300. The majority of it is, the vast majority of it is Stark and Keenan. There are some costs included in there for legal services, specifically for the police department, that are not through Stark and Keenan. Okay. Any comments?
You've shown through legal services, we're about, we expended about half the fund, half what was budgeted last year. I guess 63 anyway. So what's the year to date? How up to date is that through March?
No. No, I understand. I just got 2 legal bills from Stark and Keenan in the last week. I just got one today and one last week. So I can get you that up-to-date number, but I believe that number, 63,000, is through December. I know I think one bill we got, the first one from last week, was a little over 9,000, and I think the one today was 10.5 or 10.6, something like that. So I think it's another 20,000, and we still have.
So we don't think barring any unforeseen things, the burn rate is, we're going to be under the 130.
We're on track to be where we need to be budget-wise. Yes, barring any craziness.
So
I'm hesitant to even speak that out loud because don't tempt fate.
But even with that, with the rate going up in '26,
Mhm.
it seems we budgeted less than this year.
Yep.
And we have a rate increase, and I
Yep.
don't think legal fees, I don't know if they were out of the ordinary this year. We didn't have any big hitters, did we?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We didn't have any big hitters or big issues, this year, that made the bills, the legal fees, that much greater than normal.
I think we had some work that was out of the norm,
Okay.
not necessarily lawsuits or anything like that, but I'd have to go back and look at the details. But, if there was anything that we felt was kind of, the project was completed, if you will,
Right.
the legal research or services were completed on something that was major, we may have backed that out or cut it in half or, just tweaked it a little bit, figuring, well, we're not going to have that next
Right.
year.
Because with the rate going from 275 to 300, I mean, that's about a 10% increase.
Mhm.
So we had a decrease in our budget.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, looking at
Mhm.
flat, projections and stuff
Mhm.
like that were, might be a little light there, I don't know.
Mhm.
We are still below market value, I think. I think the attorneys would probably agree with me. For Stark and Keenan's rates for us, as opposed to if we went with another firm, I think are very fair and have been very fair for probably the last decade or longer. I've also, to your other point, Mr. Chismore, I've also taken the posture, we used to look at our own contracts and review a lot of our stuff in-house. Lisa and I, we initially argued at first a little bit and disagreed, but then we both came to a resolution that the contracts and the work that we're doing is simply too complex and too time-consuming. What it takes us 4 or 5 hours to do, an attorney can do in maybe an hour. And we're doing more settlements, more easement agreements, a lot. Liz is getting eyes on pretty much every document
Right.
that we're doing. And it's not because we can't do it necessarily, it's just they're time-consuming. And Liz is picking up small things that maybe Lisa and I might miss. We're also finding, as she discussed in one of the previous meetings when we had the sewer issue from 1979, to go back and look at legally and research all those records would have just been overwhelming for Mike or I or Lisa to do. So my posture has been, and I know it costs us a few more dollars, but in the long run, I think it protects us by engaging with her on a more frequent basis. And I know she's fairly lenient with us too. There's a lot of little things that she does for us.
Right.
But We also,
I was never
Oh, no, no, no,
10%
no.
increase was just, that's a reality. I wasn't thinking
No.
of changing,
right, I just wanted to.
I'm just saying it was a 10% increase.
Right. Historically, if Mr. Keenan were still here, I mean, we didn't used to do it with
Yeah.
Mr. Keenan, but I changed the posture because it's just too complex. So whether our fees, whether our hours will go up or not, I'm not 100% sure. It depends on the complexity of the issues. But I think we've handled a lot of heavy stuff the last 18 to 24 months. Things are starting to settle out. We fixed a lot of gaps, like if you all approve us the money for the boundary survey and that work, we're 90% of the way there. So Liz will do all that for us. It will save money in the long run. So wasn't questioning what you were asking, just, I think it's a good deal what we're thinking of Stark and Keenan
Right.
for right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
And-
Thanks, Lisa.
Oh,
On
sure.
that topic, when I started here and when I got onto the board and I was looking at the contractual agreements that were coming before us to be reviewed, I was horrified to find out that they were not being reviewed by an attorney, many of them. Because when I worked for the county, nobody signed anything unless it was reviewed and signed off by the law department. Life is just too complicated today, and it is really a huge benefit to have Liz review all the contractual agreements that we are signing to prevent, it's all good until it's not, and when things fall apart, that's when you'll be sorry you signed an agreement that, somebody didn't take a look at. And I certainly would never expect anybody on staff to be able to do the kind of review that Liz would do for us. So I am 100% on board with. And I know a lot of the contracts were reviewed, and they'll just be sort of standardized and used in the future for the groups that we work with. But to have her eyes on things, particularly land records that we're, doing easements and deeds and things,
Mhm.
we've got to have an attorney take a look at those.
Mhm.
So I'm no criticism of staff, and
None taken.
it's
Mm-mm.
outside of your wheelhouse,
Mhm.
and as a governmental entity, we need to have an attorney take a look at those. So
Mhm.
I'm happy that we've made that change, that you made that change, Eddie.
Mhm. And she does a great job.
Yes.
And she's really great to work with.
Yes.
So I think we're all really pleased at, what we're paying for.
Yeah,
Um,
Just to chime in about that, I don't mean to extend the conversation, but wearing multiple hats on a day-to-day basis, not always being able to be a specialist in any one particular area, having Liz at our disposal is absolutely, hands down, necessary, just from my perspective. The time and energy it would take for me to, brush up on any type of contract law from a risk management perspective, it would cause, in my department anyway, cause me not to be able to fulfill my duties as town clerk, human resource manager, private use of public rights person, all sorts of other responsibilities would fall by the wayside. So it's definitely necessary.
It's almost necessary for everybody to have their own personal attorney in your personal life, because you're always, engaging in contractual agreements with your cable provider, your insurance that you purchase for your car, and it's really tough for individuals. And as a governmental entity, we see everything from soup to nuts, so we've got to have somebody taking a look at those. And I would never expect anybody to be able to do all of that.
You struck a funny chord, because Mike's been working on the cable franchise agreement, and my God, that reads like War and Peace times 3.
Yes.
And it is incredibly complex. We actually hired an attorney
Yes.
outside of Liz.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Liz had mentioned that to me. It is just such a complicated area
Yes.
that not only would I not expect anybody in this room to do it, but I would not expect Liz to be able to do it on her own. It's a specialized area. We needed some help.
Yeah, I think to Steve's point, in light of everything that was just said, all of which I agree with, I would actually also expect that number to be higher. But, yeah, so we'll see.
And I can certainly take another look at it. So the rate is a 9% increase. If we look at where we are today, this is half the budget, and then add 9%, the budget would be 139,000 compared to 129,000. And so I was just sitting here thinking about some things. I didn't bring my huge folder that has all my documentation in it. But, items like the MOUs, that's not going to happen again. Now, yes, maybe something's going to take its place, but those took a tremendous amount of time. So I think when we looked at the budget and what the legal fees were being spent on, we probably did back out some of those types of expenses, going, all right, well, this was a one-time, yes, we know something else is going to happen, but maybe not to this level. But I'm happy to take another look at it. It's all good, but I think we're talking about $10,000, roughly. Okay.
And that's easy to make.
What's that?
And that's easy to make up.
It's, yeah, you're not, if we were talking 50,
Yeah,
30, I'm like, let's think, but
Okay.
10,
got it.
it's okay. Alrighty, so the last department for tonight is yours. On page 84. I'm going to focus on page 87. And I have some questions for you all. So, your travel account. Within your travel account, we have the dues for the Hartford Cecil MML and the chamber dues. Then we go down to the MML Cecil Hartford chapter quarterly dinners. We budgeted assuming that all 4 would be attended by at least 3 individuals. Is that reasonable and what you all want?
I don't think we've yet had 3 individuals attend at once,
I don't either. I think we're usually 2.
usually 2.
Okay, I can take another look at that number then. Okay.
Although you're talking about sort of nickels there.
You are, but let me just keep going down the list. And I say that, I didn't mean I was gonna change the budget, but at least gonna make a notation for next year. The MML Fall Conference, I assumed that 2 would attend, but historically, only 1 has attended.
I am looking at attending this year,
Okay.
so I don't know if you will follow.
To look at the calendar, do we have a date? I think I have a date for that. I think it's on my calendar.
It's only the first week of November.
Okay, I'll take a look.
All right. And then with the MML Summer Conference, in the past, we have always assumed that all 5 will attend. That hasn't happened for years. So we backed it down to 4. Are you all comfortable with that?
Yes.
All right, so you answered all my questions. Then within that line item is mileage reimbursement or meal advancement for the different conferences that you all could request. And then there's other function ticket costs that, come up here and there that, are not going to be the same from year to year, so we included $500 in that. Advertising is just based on history, so this is for the town board public hearings. So this is for the different ordinances or different resolutions. This has nothing to do with planning when they have to have a public hearing for, Board of Appeals or Planning Commission or anything like that, or they have to have a recording secretary there. That has nothing. This is strictly you as a town board and the ordinances and public hearings. That telephone, of course, it just pays for your cell phones. And then on page 88, this is the other. Really doesn't fit in any other line item in your budget, but it pays for sponsorship events and ads like the Greater Bel Air Community Foundation Annual Golf Tournament and Military Appreciation. It pays for the display fee for the Greater Hartford Community Reception in Annapolis. When we do host the MML Cecil Hartford, it would come out of this account, but that won't happen for a bit since we just did that. But then it also will include any kind of apparel or supplies, any various items for newly elected commissioner, and it's about $3,200. Is there anything that I haven't covered that you all want to add to your budget? Okay,
Not me.
okay,
Anybody else?
all righty. So that's all that was on the agenda for tonight to talk about. So we're at the last item, which is discussion by the commissioners on the budget issues. Do you all have anything else? I can run through my list that I have here first. I have capital reserve balance, the recommendation from, again, GASB, GFOA, GAP, on unassigned fund balance, the use and the maintaining balance. The legal actual to date with these two legal bills that I just received, and taking another look at the legal budget. Is there anything I missed?
Lisa, I had one. We
Yes.
wanted to check, I'll check with the chief to determine if he's going to install any more red light cameras.
Okay.
I'll add that.
I did have, if the board would like, I know there is a policy on the various funds, that we increased from 25 to 50%, the
Yep.
unassigned balance
Yep.
fund, the leap out fund. Anybody want to see those policies in writing? They do exist. Nope, okay. In that case, we don't need to take a look at those.
Okay.
I would like to see the capital reserve fund balance and the unassigned fund balance for like the last three fiscal years or something that's easy to.
The capital
to
reserve?
pull. All the funds that we have, the capital reserve, the unassigned fund balance, the leave payout, like where have they, what's been the balance for this for the last 3 fiscal years?
Yep.
Just for comparison purposes. And the other thing was, I know Jake was interested in the amortization schedule.
Oh, yes, sorry, that was correct. Thank you. So I got 22.
And I think that's all I had on a list of things that I thought might be interesting after this session. Well, I'd just like to say thank you to Lisa for that educational seminar this evening on the budget and the
Well,
history of it.
Everyone stayed awake, so that's a good
That's
thing.
good, that's good. We're paying attention, we're on the right page, and
Just the first week. No. We got more opportunity.
You do, but this was more my turn, other than finance, which not a whole lot there. But no, you're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you know, as you all go through you'll go through your books before any of the meetings, or either reflecting on tonight. If there's anything that you have questions about, you know where to find me. Shoot me an email, call me, stop by. That's what I'm here for. Happy to help. And then, so Tuesday, like I mentioned, we'll have our regular work session, and then we have the police department, economic development, culture arts, Christmas parade, and hopefully the 2 nonprofits will get back to me that I've got slated for that day. I typically do not like to put Public Works and Police Department on a regular work session day. However, there was scheduling conflicts, and I just didn't have a choice. So hopefully it won't be too long of a meeting. But thank you guys for your attention.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other commissioners' comments, questions?
My comment is that I move
Good. Do I have a second on that motion? Second. And everyone in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.